Hello and welcome to Say Whaat with SRM AP, where we explore topics that matter to our world, our environment, and our future. I am Dr. Karthik, Associate Professor in the Department of Environmental Science and Engineering, and your host today. Today, we are going to talk about an exciting field that tackles two critical challenges at once: waste management and renewable energy. To make you guys familiar, think about this. Every day, we throw away food scraps, vegetable peels, and other organic waste. But what if that waste could be turned into something useful, like a source of energy? That's what biogas is all about. And today we are going to unpack it with a special guest, Professor Sankar Ganesh from the Department of Biological Sciences at BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus. Professor Ganesh, thank you for joining us on Say What.
Yeah, good morning and thank you, Professor Karthik. I'm excited to be here. And biogas is a topic I'm really passionate about, and it's great to have this opportunity to discuss it with you and with the audience. Thank you.
I know about your passion for the environment and waste management, but before going into the topic, let the listeners get to know you more. Professor Ganesh, could you tell us a little bit about your background? What draw you to this particular field of anaerobic digestion, waste management?
Yeah, so it's a big story, but cut it short. I'm an alumnus of Center for Environmental Education, CEE, which is based out of Ahmedabad, but I was working on a field office at Tirupur, a small town in Tamil Nadu, where I was engaged with the solid waste management, and that is where I picked up on anaerobic digestion or waste management as a field. So my major job of the day used to go to various waste generation sites, the landfills, the dump yards, etc. And that is where I came to know that India is one of the largest generators of organic waste, which can be useful for the generation of energy, especially the green energy. And that's how I picked up about anaerobic digestion. But otherwise, technically, I'm trained as a student of environmental science and engineering, and also after my PhD I did my postdoc in bioprocess engineering, an extension of anaerobic digestion. So almost for the last 3 decades or so I've been working especially on anaerobic digestion.
That's interesting. What do you enjoy most about your work? Do you have any favorite projects or breakthroughs that you would like to share with us?
Yes, definitely. So one of the typical ways by which solid waste or the garbage is managed in India is just to landfill it or just dump it in the dump yards, open dump yards. So either the landfills or the dump yards, both will generate something called as the landfill leachate, which is a very hazardous liquid. And I was always wondering how to deal with that. Typically, only physico-chemical methods are used for the treatment of landfill leachate. But then I thought, why not biological methods? And that's why I wanted to use this landfill leachate as a source for the anaerobic digesters, and then that has trickled my interest furthermore on anaerobic digestion, and we have already done it and we have come up with some good results, and I look forward using anaerobic digestion as the sole or probably the dominant method for the treatment of landfill leachate, not only in India, across the globe.
That's fascinating. You have worked in various areas of biological sciences and environmental studies. How did you transition into focusing on biogas and sustainable energy solutions?
So it's like 2 mangoes in one shot, like country like us, including India and other Southeast Asian countries, we have a lot of issues basically with waste management, and luckily we generate a lot of organic waste. So almost more than 50% of the waste which is generated in India is organic, and because we start from the scratch, unlike in the West where we just buy something from the stores and then we just eat them. That doesn't happen in India. So we thought why don't we address this 50% of the waste which can handle rest of the things much easily. So that is the focus. I started with that. And of course there are various methods like composting and other bioprocessing methods by which we can handle these organic waste. But I thought biogas or anaerobic digestion would be an interesting area, because in the process of waste management we also will generate gas. Because India is again a country where we are in the depth of energy, especially if you talk about the rural populace. We need a lot of good energy or clean fuel especially for cooking. So that's where the biogas comes in. So it's like a win-win situation. We do the waste management as well as we produce energy which can be used for better purposes. That's what is my interest and which has turned me towards focusing on biogas and sustainable energy solutions.
Thank you for sharing that, Professor Ganesh. With your expertise and passion for waste management and anaerobic digestion, I think it's perfect time for us to dive into the today's topic. Let's start with the basics. I'm sure our listeners have heard the term biogas, but what exactly it is and how does it work? Could you break it down for us?
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm sure all of us would have heard about something called as the gobar gas, which used to be a hot topic way back in late 70s or early 80s. So we used to feed the cow dung as the substrate in some blocks, which is typically they are built under the ground, and then after some time we get some gas, and that is being used by the women for cooking in the kitchen. So that's a very common thing in the late 70s, early 80s, and anaerobic digestion is just a technical term for that. Nothing big about it, or it's not a rocket science. It's very simple. Any organic matter, let it be a waste or a cow dung or anything for that matter, if it is kept in an oxygen-free environment, you call it as an anaerobic environment, leave it for some time, and then the microorganisms will do the job, and then they will convert this organic waste and they produce what is called the biogas. So when we say biogas, it is almost like predominantly methane, which is of the high calorific value, but there will also be some carbon dioxide, etc. So in simple words, it's like an underground stomach, so where the bacteria take up the organic waste what we feed, and then they convert it into biogas, which is potential energy which can be directly used for thermophilic applications like in the kitchen, or if it is produced in a larger volume, it can also be converted into electricity. And once it is converted to electricity, it is like a currency. You can use it for anything. So that's the basic science behind that. So on a lighter note, it's like an underground stomach which is being operated by our friends who are the microorganisms.
Right. I like that particular word, underground stomach. So you have mentioned about using the biogas for various applications. What are the other side benefits we get apart from the energy applications for cooking or fuel? What are the other things we get out of the whole anaerobic digestion process?
Yeah. So this process is as good as what we do. I mean, how we eat, because 100% of what we eat cannot be digested, and then we also excrete. Same thing happens in an anaerobic digester. Whatever we feed, 100% of that cannot be used up by the microorganisms. So whatever is being used, that gets converted into the biogas, which we use it as an energy. But we also get something called as the digestate. So this digestate, which is already been cooked, this is already been acted upon by the microorganisms. This can serve as a wonderful, I don't call it as a biofertilizer per se, but it's a good soil amendment, because I'm very careful about using the term fertilizer, because every component of the fertilizer should have the fertilizing capability. But this digestate which comes out of the anaerobic digesters, so they do have a fertilizing capability, but they can't be compared at par with the chemical synthetic fertilizer. So I would rather call it as soil amendment, which is a wonderful thing for the plant growth. As you know, in the during the Green Revolution, we have used a lot of this chemical synthetic fertilizers. So today we are in a race to manage this alkalinity or the salt formed in the agricultural soils by adding so-called soil amendments or organic fertilizers or biofertilizers. So this digestate, which is another product which comes out of the biogas digesters, could be a wonderful source for adding it for agriculture and horticulture purposes.
Great. Now here in India, we generate a massive amount of organic waste. We have seen piles of landfills lying many places across the country. Why do you think biogas is so important for us, and what makes it a good fit for India?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, India is one of the countries where we generate a lot of organic waste, unlike in the West. More than 50% of our waste is organic, and also we need energy. So if this organic waste is not being handled properly. So that's the one which is creating a lot of issues. Either if it goes to the landfills or it goes to the dump yards. So if you are able to harness this organic waste and then convert it into biogas through the anaerobic digestion, so we are tackling one of the largest portion of the municipal solid waste. That's on one side. But on more interestingly, in this trade-off, we are also getting very useful, sustainable, renewable energy, which can be used for our energy requirements. That's on one side. But today in India, we have slowly developed. We are looking at large-scale plants where we also want to convert this biogas and use it for various applications, not only just for the thermophilic or just for cooking, but even as fuel for transportation or industrial energy requirements, so on and so forth. So I think this is a high time where we should think of having large volumes of these biogas digesters installed in various cities of India.
That's so true. There are many biogas plants in villages provide cooking fuel for entire households. It's like taking food scraps from your kitchen, putting them in a digester and using the gas to cook your next meal. It's so efficient.
My answer is yes and no, because when the scale of the biogas digesters is going to be very small, let's say a household plant, probably the volume of biogas which is generated out of it may not be used for a good purpose, because the volume of waste generated itself is too low, let's say in a family of 2 adults and 2 kids. So then I would suggest we should go for the community level biogas plants. Let's say there is a flats, or there are apartments where there are, let's say, 100, 200 units there. And for the entire unit, we can have one centralized biogas digesters where all the organic waste which is generated from these residences can be used as a substrate. That's at one level, which will work good because the volume of biogas produced would be good. We can use it for a good purpose. Probably we can convert it into electricity and use it for the public requirements like the street lights and sewage treatment plants or wherever the energy is required. That's on one side. And as I said earlier, India is also looking at huge biogas plants, compressed biogas plants, where the entire city's organic waste is being used, and then it is converted either to electricity and then passed into the grid, or it can be converted into gas cylinders which can be used for transportation purposes. So the scale matters here. So I would suggest at an individual household level, probably it's not a good idea, but as residential complexes, it's going to be wonderful. But at the city level, it is going to be a game changer.
That's impressive. Do you see any challenges with respect to the solutions which is being looked at either at centralization or decentralization levels?
Yeah, so one of the major problems associated with anaerobic digestion per se is the capital expenses, because as I said earlier, this is an anaerobic process because the entire thing has to be cut off from the atmospheric air, especially the oxygen. So as a result, the entire process has to be done in a huge container. You call it as a digester or you call it as a reactor or whatever it is. But this is going to be expensive owing to the volume of waste what we generate, right? If you are going to have anaerobic digester for the municipal solid waste or for the organic waste, it's going to be really huge structure. So the capital expense is one of the major setbacks. But however, if you see the return of investment, so we will get it back in probably less than 5-6 years, depending on what is the type of reactor, what is the volume of biogas produced, so on and so forth. But this is a major hindrance. People, when we propose that, because I also install reactors at an industrial scale, when we propose this, then the resistance comes only with the capital expenses. But if people understand that they are going to get it back in a shorter period of time, then it should be fine. So that's on one side. The second thing is, like, as far as the urban local body is concerned, so waste management or waste treatment should not be seen as a profit-making industry. This is a service which has to be provided to the to the community. So, for example, the sewage treatment plant, we may not get anything out of it, but still we have to do it so that we don't have anything left out to the environment without treatment. So, similarly, this anaerobic digestion also has to be taken from that perspective. And of course, whatever we get out of it, the energy, the cost, etc., can be a boost to the entire process. So if we see from that perspective, it's great. That's one thing. Second thing, there are also cases where such infrastructure is being built up, but the supply of organic waste to this biogas plants would be an issue, because it should be as much as possible, or if I can say 100% organic waste only has to be fed into the system. And if there are some inorganic waste and other things like metals and plastics and glass, etc., this is going to hinder the process. So getting a good organic waste is another issue. And of course, people have to be aware about this process per se. And then even at, if not at the city level or centralized level, even at the residential complexes level, if there are 100, 200 units, they can propose to the builders and then ensure that such biogas plants are produced, so that the pressure to the urban local body from this residential units would be minimized. So that would be, I think, moving forward, we should have this strategy so that the entire city has less pressure on the waste treatment. As well, the decentralized units can build up something which they can use it for their own public utilities also.
That's interesting. So we are looking at the societal benefits at large than the economic or the economic benefit around it. So the societal benefit is incomparable to the overall growth which we get out of anaerobic digestion. We have talked a lot about different aspects of biogas applications, waste management, etc. I just wanna understand what happens actually inside a biogas plant. Can you explain to us?
Yeah, it's very simple. That's the reason why this technology is widely followed across our nation as well as globally. So let's talk about food waste, which is very common and generated at every level, including the household. So this food waste, if it is already in a particular form, this can be directly fed into a digester. The digester is nothing but a closed container where we normally inoculate it with some sludge which is already present in an anaerobic digester. And this inoculation is done for ensuring that the responsible microorganisms are present there to do this job. So that's the first thing. You have a container which is airtight, and then depending on the volume of waste generated, you have to design the size of the container and then inoculate it with some microorganisms which can do the job, because end of the day, these are the players who are going to do that. And then you can just start feeding the food waste. If it is already, let's say, if you talk about South India where a lot of rice is being used, this can be directly fed into it. But if you have heterogeneity in the waste, then probably we can shred it, make it into a pulp, and then add it into the container. Leave it for some time, and then automatically the organisms will do the job, and then they'll start producing the biogas. So you have to tap the biogas. And one word of caution is that while it is good that we are getting the methane from the biogas, but you know, the methane causes more damage than the carbon dioxide as far as the greenhouse effect and then the global warming is concerned. So we have to be very careful in tapping the methane and then using it for a better purpose. So very simple technology, nothing much is involved. As far as a layman is concerned, of course, there are a lot of research questions which are to be answered, which we are working across the globe. But anybody, even an unlettered person, can start it, and especially for the farmers. So they produce a lot of these agricultural residues after the harvest. So even that can be used as the feedstock for anaerobic digestion, and the energy what they generate out of it in their own field can be used for, let's say, for the pump which is requiring electricity, and some parts of the country they don't have continuous electricity, and this biogas digester, the energy which is produced, can supplement the requirement for the electric needs in the agriculture farm. So any organic waste anywhere, we can go in for anaerobic digestion. Very simple, not very complicated technology.
So you are saying proceed with caution.
Yes, yeah.
So India has been working with this particular technology for many decades. Can you throw us some light on how it has evolved over the period of time, and what are the differences that we are making across our societies and communities?
Yeah, So, as I said earlier, the focus in 1970s, I think before we were born, so that was more towards ensuring a good cooking fuel is available in the rural areas, and then that is it makes sense because that is where a lot of this cow dung and other agricultural residues were available. So most of the focus at that point in time were, back of the yard or a farm-based biogas digesters where they feed in the cow dung and the agricultural residues and prepare this biogas and directly connect it to the kitchen. There are special stoves which are available which can take in this biogas, and they wanted to ensure that firewood is not used, and then no smoke and clean fuel is ensured to for the cooking purpose. So that was the focus. But later the potential was realized, and then we started moving to large scale reactors, especially for handling the municipal solid waste, but just focusing as a waste treatment methodology per se. But now, after 2-3 decades, now India is looking biogas as one of the promising technologies for not only converting the waste into a potential resource, but also as a supplement for different types of energies. It could be directly as a biogas for cooking, or it can be converted to electricity, or as I said, it can be converted to compressed biogas, which can be used for the transportation purposes per se.
So we have talked a lot about the technology applications. We are doing amazing things with respect to biogas. But what is holding us from widespread of this particular technology across India?
Yeah, I will not completely accept with this statement, because even in India today, the policies have evolved and we are moving in a good direction towards encouraging the biogas. One of the major hindrances, as I said earlier, is the capital expense. So I would request my young colleagues, the sprouting minds, if they can come up with some reactors which are much cheaper, which can be easily adapted by all the people across the nation without much of capital expense, that would be great. So that's the first thing. And second thing, in India, we are also having a lot of subsidies which are provided by the government, so that they encourage the growth of such digesters. And most importantly, the starting of any process is much easier, but maintaining it is a difficult thing. As far as the operation and maintenance of the biogas digesters are concerned, we have to be very careful, because in addition to the organic waste, if some, as I said earlier, some other inorganic things like plastics, metals enter into the system, they may choke it, and then the operation and maintenance become a big challenge. So if these petty things are taken care, I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful boon for the entire nation as far as waste management and the energy generation is concerned.
Absolutely. I think today's conversation has shown that how much potential biogas has, and not just for managing waste, but for making a real impact on energy and sustainability. But before we wrap up, what's one thing you would like to accomplish in your career that you haven't tackled yet?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. I've been telling it to all my students, including my PhD students, like I want to come up with a broth of microorganisms where, see, when we go out into our cities, I mean, there is no exception. You can see a lot of this garbage piled up on the roadsides, which is, an eyesore, and it's not an aesthetic thing. So I was telling to my students that we have to come up with a broth. So you see wherever a pile of, especially the organic waste, you just spray it on it, and then you come back on the next day. I mean, next day is too early, but at least in a couple of days, and you don't see anything there. Everything gets converted either as a compost or something else which is useful, but you don't see them anymore there in that place. That's a dream. I don't know how far it will happen. We are trying to work on the composting process to reduce the time taken for the conversion of organic waste. So there is no better anaerobic digester than the ruminant stomach or the cattle stomach, right? So we feed something, and 24 hours or less than that, they give out the dung. And that's a wonderful system. We are working on mimicking that system, and it's not very far. Probably we may come up with a reactor where we call it as technically the retention time would be too low, so that if not 24 hours, but at least in a couple of days, the entire thing will be handled and converted into a useful product. So in that way, the quantum of waste generation in India, we know it's quite increasing day by day. So that problem can also be handled. So we wanted the entire process to happen much faster and then give a good product out of it. That's my dream for the entire biogas or anaerobic digestion per se.
My wishes on overcoming the challenge. Thank you, Professor Ganesh, for joining us on our podcast and for sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Karthik. It's been a pleasure discussing this with you, and I'm sure our listeners will now understand a bit about biogas, and they will also contribute towards the growth of this anaerobic digestion in our country or elsewhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Say What with SRM AP. We hope you found today's episode insightful and inspiring. Until next time, stay curious, stay green, and join us again as we explore more topics that shape us, our world.